Hey there, I am back with another deck review, and today we're going to be looking at Warrior Women from Headless Kings. Now, this is the first deck from Headless Kings and was released on Kickstarter earlier this year. It's meant as a tribute to some of the women who had an influence in war across their cultures and across the ages. Looks at a lot of different unsung heroes, maybe ones that you haven't heard of. I certainly had not heard of most of the characters in this deck. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about it. Usually you hear about men in war throughout time and across all those cultures, but this one celebrates some of the female heroes of their ages. So it's a great and underused theme for a deck, but let's jump into it and find out how it turned out. All right, starting with the tuck case. Now, it is done in reverse, and what I mean by that is this is usually the back of the tuck case. You can tell because that's where the flap is, where it opens up. But this design here is clearly the front. Has the name of the deck, Warrior Women, in gold foiling. And the entire tuck case is on this matte black cardstock, and it's completely covered with embossing and then those three different colors of foil. You have the gold, silver, and then little hits of red as well. And I love the effect of that red foil. It's something that almost disappears if you tilt it into the dark, but then as you tilt it into the light, it just pops out and gives the deck that extra dimension and extra depth. Really cool effect of it overall. The central element here almost looks like a stained glass window or something like that. You have the crossed stylized swords in gold, and then lots of different details and flourishes going all the way around the deck. It gives a really cool effect, and I love that, like the court cards inside that we're going to look at, it feels almost like a mixture of different cultures. For example, you have the fleur-de-lis up here, or almost looks like a fleur-de-lis on the side here, but then you have a more Celtic looking design in the corners. So it's a nice mixture of different cultures across, European style swords crossed in the middle, and I think it just gives it a really nice effect overall. In the sides here, you've got MMXX for 2020 when the deck was printed, and then Volume 1 over here. This is actually intended to be the first of a series of decks in the Warrior Women line, which will be very cool to see if they continue on with this series. All right, turning to the sides, you've got Warrior Women by Headless Kings on one side, and then Made in the United States of America on the other. This deck is printed by the USPCC. The bottom here features some very simple ad copy for USPCC and Headless Kings. It features the Headless King logo over there on the side. And then on the top is a little bit more foiling and detail. The front / the back of the tuck case here gives you a little preview of the back design of the cards, which as usual we'll look at in a second. And the tuck case is finished with this tuck seal here. Shiny tuck seal in gold and red, features this almost snowflake looking design, and it is individually numbered to show you the edition of 1,250 decks. I got number 812. As you open up the inner flap, more red and silver foiling, detailing, and then little elements there on the inner flaps as well. And you get some nice interior printing. It's all just gold metallic, and features just a pattern with the different suit elements indicated. Continues all the way to the bottom. So very nice tuck case, great start to the deck overall, but that's not even the highlight. Let's get into the cards. All right, starting with the back design, and here it is. So continuing with the metallics that we saw on the tuck case, this is completely done in 3 different colors of metallic inks. So you have the black background against the white card, but then you have the gold metallic ink, silver metallic ink, and a red metallic ink. And you can see all that kind of reflecting and flashing in the light. And it's a similar design to what we looked at on the tuck case. You have that central element with the 4 styled swords in gold, and then lots of intricate and small, almost random details going all the way around. For how random all of these details look and all the different styles that are kind of mashed in together here, I think it really still presents a fairly cohesive design. I really like how this turned out. On the sides, you've got the MMXX for 2020 reflected on the other side, and then the 4 suits at the top and bottom. Overall, it's a really nice, it's a two-way back design. Always prefer that. I think if I have one knock, it's right here at the way that the border turned out. So don't mind the white poker border at all, but I don't like that they use the silver right up to the edge. I wish they'd use a darker color at the edge. As you turn this in the light, that edge almost disappears and kind of fades into the white, which kind of leaves a little bit on the table in terms of kind of that design popping out. That said, when you get this in hand, you look at it up close, it really is a striking and beautiful back design. So great job on that. All right, getting into the faces of the cards. You get 4 extra cards, they're all jokers, and they all feature these beautifully drawn armor sets. I'll get a real close up here. They're all done in kind of a pencil sketch style or a pen and ink style. Very sort of raw sketched look to them. And you can see the tremendous talent that went into these. You have the red joker down the sides and that beautiful black and white sketch. Got the armor kind of resting on the sword, and then on the hilt of the sword is a helmet. All 4 of them, the 2 red and 2 black jokers, give you a slightly different style of armor on each one. There's one that's much more tribal of a look with the kind of fur lined on the shoulders there. And then kind of a more Asian inspired one on this one. So beautiful set of 4 jokers, great addition. I love that they went with 4 jokers instead of like a gaff card or anything like that. You know, given that this is more of an art deck overall, I like including extra jokers and more artwork instead of a gaff card that I really wouldn't use. All right, now the deck itself. And we'll start with the 4 aces. All 4 of them are kind of equal aces. There's no one power ace on this one, and they're all fully custom. They feature a larger pip here in the center. This one's the ace of spades, and has that cross in the middle, and lots of flourishes and elements all the way around. No particular theme, at least that I could detect on this one, but they are really beautifully done. And again, there's kind of a slight sketching on this one. You'll see kind of slight imperfections in the shading, so and kind of lends itself to that hand-drawn look, which I think is really striking. And then you have these nice thin and very small pip and index in the corner. Still pretty readable, but definitely on the smaller side for that pip. And all 4 of the aces are more the same. You have this nice thin diamond pip, and the kind of hand-drawn red ink there. And then there's your club pip, very fat and wide on the club pip. And then your heart. This is probably my favorite of them. I think the heart turned out really, really nicely. So that's the 4 aces. The number cards all feature custom pips as well. Same pip and index style in the corner, and not quite as ornate as the ace of spades, but you do get kind of a little stylized design on the spade pips in the center. This one almost makes like a fleur-de-lis in the center of the spade pip. Pretty classic and easy to read orientation of the pips, but nothing too special there. The diamond pips feature really nice pattern inside them as well, and are more of a classic red. And then into the clubs. The clubs are probably the plainest of them all. Kind of a nice custom shape, but the design inside, I wish they'd gone a little bit heavier on that one, but still very nice. And then into the hearts. And just a nice little flourish on the inside there. So that's the number cards, and the real story of this deck though is told in the court cards. So let's get going. Now, each one of the court cards is going to feature beautifully hand-drawn art and features one of the many female warriors throughout history. So I love that there's a story behind each one of these, and they're all really beautifully drawn. Now they're done in the black and white style, and then the background is given a slight color. So on the black cards, that background's kind of a yellowish brown color. And it's hard to make out, but there's kind of a scene going on in the background, really faint and hard to make out. Some of the cards you can barely see it at all, but you can kind of make out, I don't know, maybe caves or sky up here. But it's more of just sort of a random styling in the back. But the character in the front is really where it's at. And so the Jack of Spades here features Tomyris. You can see her name down here on the side. Tomyris ruled over an Iranian people known as the Massagetay. I think that's how you say it, Massagetay. And they were from Central Asia. She ruled in about 530 BC and actually led an entire army in defense against Cyrus the Great, where she ultimately defeated and killed him as one of her greatest military acts. Beautifully illustrated. You can see her reaching for the sword strapped against her back, or the arrow rather, on her back, with the bow in her other hand. So there is Tomyris. The Queen of Diamonds features Zenobia. Zenobia was the queen of the Palmyrene Empire in Syria, and she ruled an empire that, while they were kind of nominally part of the Roman Empire, they were actually sort of a rival against Rome. She actually ultimately attempted to secede from Rome at the height of her power, as she controlled large parts of the empire as queen. I love the look on her face, the headdress, on the spear, that sort of sideways look of determination on her face. So there's Zenobia. Really like that one. And then the King of Spades, usually reserved for the most powerful character in the deck. This one features Artemisia. Artemisia was the queen of the Halicarnassus, and she also served as an ally and naval commander with Xerxes I. Now, if you recognize the name Xerxes I, he was actually the one who fought against Leonidas and the 300 Spartan warriors. And so shortly after that battle, which they won at great cost, she actually fought along with Xerxes at the Battle of Salamis in 480 BC. So as a naval commander, she had great significance for one of the most powerful Persian rulers of the time. I love the look on her face, the crossed daggers, and that quiver of arrows on her back. Very cool. And this one, you can kind of make out a little bit of that detail in the background. You can see the ship in the background there, a nod to her significance as a naval hero. So there are your spades. Now as we go to the diamonds, you'll see a little bit of a color swap in the background. The background's now done more in a red. I definitely like this color scheme a little bit better than the black cards. The red allows that black and white drawing to really pop out. But let's talk about some of the characters. This one is Florence of Burgundy. She was a French warrior and died very young. She was only 14 years old when she led 1,500 horsemen to the First Crusade. And according to legend, she had taken 7 arrows during the battle and continued to fight before she ultimately fell to the army she was facing. So a lot of determination that she showed, and to have done that at only 14 years old. I love that look on her face. You can see that youthful look as she pulls that sword out of her scabbard. So very cool. This is probably my favorite of the stories of the characters. I love that she did that at such a young age. This one's interesting. This is Ethel Fleed. That is how you pronounce her name, Ethel Fleed. And she was the daughter to Alfred the Great. She was an Anglo-Saxon queen in her own right and a warrior in 9th century England. And she was born and lived during the height of Viking invasion. So Vikings were invading all over the world, but really they were invading in her region, and she was one of the main people in England who fought against and helped to repel some of those invasions. So it has tremendous effect there. And this one, I love the texturing that you can see on that mail, the scale armor that she's wearing. Very beautiful as she kind of cradles that sword in her arm. Now we go to the King of Diamonds. This is the one famous character, I guess you would say, the one that I think most people probably know the best. This is Joan of Arc, a legitimate, absolute hero and legend in France. Another one who led at a very young age. She was only 18 years old when she led the French army to a victory over the English at Orleans. She became an absolute legend in France. Ultimately, though, she was captured and martyred by the English, who called her a heretic. And she was burned at the stake. But ultimately, she became famous throughout time when she was canonized as a Roman Catholic saint. Still remains a symbol within France today, but now also a symbol within the Catholic Church. She was known for dressing like a boy as part of what she did. And you can see kind of that more male look to her with the short cut hair and then the sword in her hand and that stoic look in her eyes. So there's Joan of Arc as the King of Diamonds. Now the Jack of Clubs, we're going to go to another part of the world. We're going to go over to Japan and take a look at Nakano Takeko. She was a Japanese warrior of the Aizu domain in the 1800s. She was known for using this long pole arm. She was actually the leader of an ad hoc group of female fighters that joined together to fight during the Battle of Aizu. But unfortunately, she was ultimately defeated there after leading them bravely into battle. So she has quite an array of weapons. She's got the sword strapped at her side, 2 more on her back, and then that long pole arm in her hands there, the blade at the end. Beautifully drawn on this one. The Queen of Clubs, we're gonna go take a look at Tomboy Gozen. Tomboy Gozen. She was what was known as an Ona Bugeisha, which is basically a female martial artist, a type of samurai. And she fought most famously as a commander of 300 samurai at the Battle of Awazu in 1185. So she actually led a number of samurai. You can see the banner at her back and that samurai sword kind of menacingly held across her body. So very cool. She led 300 samurai. Such an amazing story. And the King of Clubs, this is Fu Hao. She was a Chinese general and the wife of Wu Ding, who was one of the kings of the Shang dynasty back in 1200 BC. She had, at the peak of her command, had over 3,000 soldiers under her, which meant that she was one of the most powerful of all Shang generals, despite being a woman. She was actually one of at least 600 women who were believed to be military participants back in that era. This one, I love the axe that she's holding. Very menacing look and almost kind of a pensive look in her eyes there. So there's Fu Hao, who fought in China. And now we go to the last suit, the Jack of Hearts, and this is kaine. Kaine was the half-sister of Alexander the Great. Her half-brother was obviously the more famous military leader at the time. They were both daughters of Philip II, or they were both children of Philip II, and she was actually at the time also very famous for her military knowledge. It was said that she would charge with her armies. She would be right at the head of the army. Usually those generals and leaders would be more in the background helping to lead the troops, but she went right to the front lines and fought with them. And became one of very few women to actually personally kill an enemy in battle when she fought the Illyrian armies. So very bold fighter, one willing to go right to the front lines. With the spears on her back, the long sword behind her, and the big shield there in the center. So there's kaine. And then you have Nzinga. I'm not sure how you say that. But Nzinga was from Africa. She was a queen of the kingdoms of Ndongo and Matamba and fought for freedom against the Portuguese slave trade. The region's now Angola, but I love the cause that she fought for. And this is one of my favorite drawn court cards, that kind of proud look on her face as she holds this, the spear in her hand, and then the 2 panthers flanking her on either side. Love the look of that one. My favorite illustrated card of the bunch. And last but not least is the King of Hearts. This is Boudicca. Boudicca was a Celtic queen in Britannia and led an uprising against the occupying Roman forces back in 60 AD. The Romans controlled a huge amount of the world at that time, but did often face rebellions like the one that Boudicca led. Now the rebellion was ultimately put down, but it was fierce enough that it actually caused the Roman Emperor Nero to consider pulling all of the Roman troops and forces out of Britain. So it gives you just an idea of how fierce that rebellion was despite its ultimate failure. And she has that kind of savage look on her face with the war paint and that crude axe slung over her shoulder. So beautifully done. So that is the deck. I love these court cards. I think they tell just phenomenal stories and give just beautiful artwork of these. One of the other things I will say that I absolutely appreciated this is in drawing these, it's not overly sexualized. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when you see female warriors, they're in extremely skimpy outfits or something like that. I love that these really paid tributes to these great warriors, giving them armor, you know, in most cases that was very true of the time. You can see that beautiful plate mail that Joan of Arc has, for example. I think that was a great tribute to pay to these tremendous and brave warriors. So that is the deck and the stories. As far as handling, this comes from the USPCC. It's on a pretty standard stock, that air cushion finish. Handles well, fans beautifully out of the box. I will say, you know, like you get sometimes with the USPCC, there is some centering issues. You'll see it's a little fatter here on the left than on the right. So a little bit of issues with centering, not uncommon for USPCC, unfortunately, but they do handle really, really nicely. Very smooth, cuts, fans, dribbles, all that, very nice. So what is the deck for? Well, for me, you know, I think technically you could probably use this for gameplay just fine. It probably handles fine for cardistry, a little bit overly custom for Magic, but really it is an art deck and one that's just meant to be appreciated. So for me, this is a collector's deck through and through, an art deck, and one that is meant to be on the shelf and appreciated. So that's where I would find this deck with its home. So that's it for now. Now, that said, I do have some news about a giveaway. I didn't just pick up one of these decks, I picked up a second one as well. So if you want to win a copy of the Warrior Women's deck of your own, this is all you have to do. All you have to do, like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Tell me which one of the characters you found the most fascinating and the most interesting out of the deck. And in a week from now, I will pick a winner for this deck right here, send it out to you. Now I will ask, you know, shipping's getting really expensive, so I'll ship anywhere in the US, that'll be included with the prize. If it's international, we'll work something out. I may ask you to contribute a little bit to the shipping just because it's gotten kind of crazy out there these days. But good luck. Hope you get a chance to own this beautiful deck right here. Definitely worth having. So that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this look at Warrior Women. Make sure to subscribe and like the video, and check me out for more deck reviews and unboxings. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.